Good morning. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Hank Hyatt, SVP of Economic Competitiveness here at the Greenville Chamber. We host these Community Matters discussions every week to connect you with local, state, and national leaders. You can find past recordings as well as upcoming Community Matters schedule at www.greenvillechamber.org. A few housekeeping points this morning before we get started. First, all attendees should be on mute with cameras turned off. You can submit questions through the chat feature. We've got a lot to talk about today, but if there's time at the end, we do want this to be an interactive discussion. So this morning, we're joined by Dave Edwards. Dave has more than 30 years experience in airport management. He has served as the president CEO of the Greenville Spartanburg Airport District since July of 2009. He's responsible for the overall administration and development of GSP. Dave is also very active in the community and provides thoughtful leadership in his role as a board member for the Greenville Chamber. Morning, Dave. Good morning, Hank. How are you this morning? Very good. Glad to have you with us.
Glad to be here.
On the way in this morning, I was thinking back about our involvement with GSP over the years, and it's been a fascinating journey, at least for me, the last 20 years, but the last 10 especially. You've had some really strong successes in the last number of years. From the completion of the Wingspan project, modernization and renovation of the terminal, to the development of the FBO Cerulean brand and the launch of that, to the cargo success you've had with Senator International. So you've been really hitting on all cylinders for a while, and then 2020 comes and kind of hits back. So wanted to get a kind of status update from you, not to be punny, but from the 30,000-foot view of the airline industry down to the tarmac at GSP as to what's happening with y'all. And does that sound fair?
Absolutely. Happy to let folks know what's going on now here at GSP. So as you indicated, Hank, we were on a roll. The last, I would say in particular, 5 or 6 years, things have been going really strong. Passenger traffic at an all-time high. We finished 2019 with 2.6 million total passengers. January and February, we were up mid to upper single digits. January this year over January of last year, and the same for February. And then we were up the first 10 days of March, and then the bottom fell out. So, we all of a sudden saw traffic plummet in April to 4% of normal traffic levels. We were able to claw back a little bit of traffic in May and June following that at 12%, and then up around 22%. July, a little further increase, up between 28 and 30% of normal traffic. And then we just finished August at around 35% of normal traffic levels. So it has been a tough road the last 5, 6, 7 months since COVID hit. Been very impactful because so much of our business and what we do is driven by passenger activity. So when you lose a significant amount as we have lost, it has had a severe impact on us financially and operationally for our customers.
Gotcha. Well, a lot of folks business communities have applied for CARES Act funding, and some have received it, some have not. How did that play into what y'all have been doing, and did you receive funding?
Well, we did. We were very fortunate. Airports nationwide, as a part of the CARES Act bill, received $10 billion in available funding. That was then distributed by the Federal Aviation Administration to airports across the country. And GSP was fortunate to get around $26 million in CARES funding, which was really critical for us, I would say, not just helpful, but critical in moving forward and allowing us to do some things with that money for our tenants here at the airport, and as well as to make sure that we could shore up our own financial resources to make sure that we could get through this crisis in a positive way. We look at just, I mentioned those stark decreases in passenger numbers in what was our fourth quarter of our fiscal year, that April through June timeframe. And that was about a $10 million revenue impact to us over that 3-month period. And then when we look at our current fiscal year that we're in right now, that began July 1 and runs through June 30 of next year, we're projecting an $18 million revenue loss during that period. So very significant for us in order to be able to bring this funding to bear. And again, it will enable us to get through this in a positive way. One of the criteria that we have to meet in accepting those funds as grant funds is also maintaining our staff here at GSP intact through December 30th of this year. And while I say that, I've made a commitment, and we've made a commitment as an organization very early on, despite receiving the CARES Act funding, to ensure that we do not impact any of our team here at GSP due to this COVID crisis, and we're committed to doing that.
So y'all are really a major employer, and you employ people in all sorts of occupations out there. What size of staff do you have? Can you talk about that just for a minute?
Sure. Well, here at the district itself, we employ 220 full-time equivalent positions. That's a little less right now than our total headcount that is approved and that we typically fund. And because what we have done through some attrition that's occurred since the COVID event, just natural departures or retirements or those kinds of things, we have not been backfilling some slots at this point. So we're below 200 right now on our headcount, down a little over 10% of what our full headcount is, and then we're trying to manage that very closely. When you look at the entire airport, the entire airport, when you look at the airlines, rental car companies, concessionaires, that's another, 800 to 1,000 employees that are here on airport property.
Gotcha. So fairly significant number of folks. So 30% is where you stand now.
35-ish, right.
So are you seeing more leisure versus business travel? What are the trends there for y'all? And are y'all different from other airports?
Well, I'd say we are different in the sense that, first, when we look at our community, even though, we're working hard to become that destination location for people to come visit. And we've had a lot of success with that as a community here over, the last 5 to 10 years. We're still predominantly a business market. So when we look at our makeup of travelers in and out of GSP, it's about a 60-40 split between business travel and leisure travel. What we have seen come back early in this pandemic in a larger way than the other is leisure travel. So leisure travel has come back faster than business travel, still down significantly, but it is outpacing the business travel that we would normally see. And it does make us different because you can go down to the coast as an example and you look at whether it's Savannah or Charleston or Myrtle Beach, and their numbers are stronger than our numbers from a recovery standpoint at this juncture because of that leisure travel. Now, the question is, we've just entered into September. Leisure travel slowing down as we finish the summer season. So how will those airports be impacted as we see the numbers come out for September? And then for us going forward on the business travel side, we've really seen, or heard, I should say, at this point from our community, that there's going to be a slow engagement and re-engagement of business travel just in general. I think, a lot of businesses are, they're a little bit conflicted right now. Do I put my people back on the road and put them out in an environment, that we currently have today, not knowing, what the exposure may be for those folks that are traveling. So I think it's really going to take, the vaccine to come to bear, hopefully by the end of this year or early next year, to really start to get business travelers traveling again. And with that said, what we're projecting right now as a recovery period, as far as for this year that we're talking about now, is that we'll get back to about 50% of normal traffic by the end of the year, and that we hope to get back to around 80% of our normal traffic by the end of June of 2021.
Very good. So the customer base is not just the flying public, either leisure or business, but one of your customers are the carriers themselves. So what does their situation look like at this point, and how well positioned are we vis-a-vis the carriers? We hear different things about different ones having different strategies moving forward. Some are coping better than others. And then what have you done to accommodate the carriers during this time frame?
Well, I think we've done a few things. So the carriers, I think for us, first I'll take it kind of at GSP's level with the airlines, and then maybe talk a little bit about how it might be slightly different nationally. So I think for us here in our market, the carriers have done a good job of bringing back the number of flights and capacity that's really commensurate with the number of people that really are going to be traveling in and out of GSP. So, they haven't brought back too much activity at this point, haven't brought in a significant amount of flights over an amount what they really need going forward. Because what I think is going to happen here when we then go out to the larger national view is in October, the airlines have made it very clear at the federal level, because they've been back asking for additional CARES Act funding, that if they don't receive that money here, that they are going to have to make some significant layoffs come October 1. They had similar provisions for their CARES Act funding as on retaining staff. Theirs only went through the end of this month, September 30th. So as of October 1, they're kind of free now to do whatever they feel they need to do for their business model. And they have been very strong in saying, several of them, that there will be tens of thousands of airline workers impacted at that point. We've seen other communities that have maybe gotten more service back, but we also believe that some of that service will probably go away in those communities because they brought back a little too much capacity too early. So I think we stand in a good position to fare well. I feel bad for the employees in the airline industry that have been negatively impacted and will be further negatively impacted by maybe some outcomes here after October 1. There has been some discussions in the industry of whether the industry has any failures. So do we see an airline failure in a bankruptcy? And I think that's, I don't want to be a predictor of that. I think there's always that possibility. I think some of the airlines have really put together some plans that are more conservative. So if you look at Delta Airlines in particular, maybe Southwest, they've taken a little bit more conservative approach as to how they're coming back and putting flights back into various markets. Southwest is very fortunate to have a strong cash balance that they can fall back on. You contrast that maybe a little bit with American and United, who have come back in a much stronger way, probably American really leading the pack. An example of that here in our market would be that prior to COVID, Delta and American were neck and neck in market share here at GSP from a passenger standpoint. But Delta was in the lead market share position. Now that American is absolutely number one by multiples over Delta at this point, because of the amount of service that in particular American has put back into GSP.
How many, I know we've adjusted based on the demand, so to speak. How many flights now, how many destinations has that changed? Have we lost carriers? Have we added carriers? What's the status on that front?
Sure. A couple of points there. We did, unfortunately, through the COVID event, lose Frontier Airlines, but we still maintain our 5 other carriers. So Delta, American, United, Southwest, and Allegiant. We have lost some nonstop destinations during the COVID crisis. And I would say it really ebbs and flows. So as an example, we are now getting back again, Denver here shortly, and we're getting back BWI with Southwest Airlines. DCA and Reagan National has been kind of in and out. If there's one, and we're getting back Detroit here shortly with Delta as well. If there's one market that is going to be, I think, take some time to get back, and some of these other markets, we may have them for 1 month or 2 months, and then we may see it go away for a month as the airlines continue to adjust. But the one market that it looks like it's going not is not going to be served until probably sometime in, I'm going to say the early late first quarter, maybe second quarter of 2021 is New York. New York is really still a very sensitive destination with some of the things that are continuing to go on up in New York, and just the original, outbreak of COVID and the impact on the New York community. And so the carriers have been, in particular Delta and United, have been slow to bring back any of that New York service.
Interesting. What's the general load factor now for the airlines running out of GSP?
Yeah, we're running, so let me, I guess, back up, and I didn't maybe quite answer your question. If I go back on prior to COVID, we had about 50 to 51 airline departures a day out of GSP. Right now, it ebbs and flows somewhere, I'm going to say, between 25 and 30 departures a day. So, we're running in that 60% range of normal departures and just round numbers typically. The load factors on those flights are right at about 50%. Is what we're running, which is I would say good in some regards, and you'd say not so good in others. I think it's good because I think that means the capacity is right sized to still make it comfortable for the traveler to be able to get on a plane, not feel like they're overly crowded, be able to get some separation, those kinds of things on the aircraft. Obviously, we want to see that continue to grow as things are getting better through the recovery and as the pandemic situation improves. But we're definitely headed on the right path at this point. And in fact, if we go back, if I just talk about some more numbers for a second, shortly after COVID hit, and I would say this was in the April kind of time frame, maybe late April, we put together a recovery plan of what that was going to look like. And I mentioned a few of those numbers as to the 50% of recovery by year end calendar year, and then 80% by year end fiscal year next year. But when we look at that trend line that we laid out for that, we are right now we're exceeding the numbers that we had projected from an employment standpoint for at least the first 2 months. So for July and August, we're trending above those forecasts that we put in place for this fiscal year. So we feel good about that right now, that we're on the right path and on the right course. Still means for an overall recovery, we're actually looking to 2024 until we have a full 100% recovery of our passengers that we just saw back here at the end of 2019.
Okay. I think anybody that flies into GSP that we talk to just finds that it's a fantastic experience, ease of access, great amenities. And y'all have done a wonderful job in terms of the renovations and adding vendors and brewery, new restaurants, all kinds of things there. How does the status of the vendors stand at this point during this time? It's got to be tough on them, I would think.
Well, it is, and I'll mention two things in this and include the airlines in this, going back a little bit to the CARES Act funding. So what we did take of that $26 million we received, we took roughly $5 to $6 million, and we used that to abate rent first for the concessionaires. So for our food and beverage concessionaires, for our retail concessionaires, our rental car companies, we basically said from the time this started back in March, and for that, originally it was for 4 months, we did a rate abatement. We then now have extended that actually to run through this entire fiscal year. So we have abated rent for all of our concessionaires for 16 months. They needed to meet a few criteria in order to be able to receive that. And we're happy to do that. We felt it was the right thing to do in order to help support our partners here at GSP. For the airlines, we took a little different approach, and rather than abating rent, we actually looked to this upcoming year as to how we could best position them for the recovery. And we have this metric in the industry called a cost per enplanement. So that's an airport cost for every person that's getting on an airplane here at GSP. And that's an industry, again, metric. Our CPE has been $650 for quite some time because we made a commitment to hold it at that level. Even through the Wingspan project, that didn't change in all the construction and improvements that we accomplished. Right now, we were at the very kind of, I would say, the average to below average on a national basis. So we were very competitive at that $6.50 rate. Because of the reduction in employments, if we had not changed how we were doing things here at GSP, that number would have gone up to $8.50 to $9. And that's really what we've seen across the industry. We've seen many airports CPE level double due to the COVID crisis. What we decided to do was to take some of that CARES Act funding, actually do what we called a rate stabilization for the carriers. And we were able, instead of their rate now for this fiscal year at the airport being $6.50 on a per passenger basis, we actually lowered that to $5.50 So we actually made it a little bit more attractive, tried to understand the plight that they're going through, the difficulties, and we wanted to do what we could, obviously, to pass on some savings to the airlines as well.
Very good. Well, are all of the concessionaires still operating, or have you had some changes in who's there and what have you?
They are not. They are not, Hank. We have our retail operator that has been in operation. They also operate the Dunkin' Donuts. But for quite some time now, we've had all of our other primary food and beverage operation completely shut down. Our Mag Escape Lounge, our VIP lounge has been shut down. Vino Volo and Market Bar was shut down as well. And unfortunately, through this event, we did lose our primary food and beverage operator as an operator. So we've been back out on the street seeking a new operator to come back and run our Chick-fil-A, our Wolfgang Puck restaurant, the DC3 Dogs, as well as our two grill concepts, Thomas Creek Grill and RJ Rockers. Fortunately, just within the last few weeks, we did get Vino Volo and the Market Bar back open. So we have some sit-down restaurant facilities. And for a lot of people, most of all, we have some alcohol availability in the airport that they can take advantage of. So we've seen a fair amount of folks partaking in that in their travel experience. So it's good to get that back and operational. Right now, we're estimating that we will be able to get Wolfgang Puck and Chick-fil-A back open again, hopefully just prior to Thanksgiving. That's the goal right now, that they'll be back open at that point. We'll bring in more than likely a new quick serve restaurant to replace DC3 Dogs. We're trying to identify that brand at this point as to what that will be. Probably some type of ethnic food is what we believe at this point, to give us a little diversity in our food and beverage program. And then probably the last two concepts to come back on from that food and beverage program will be on the two concourses, RJ Rockers and Thomas Creek. And I don't anticipate that those will come back into the fold, and probably until, might not even be next summer. It could be that they don't come in until fall of 2021, depending on, again, our how traffic comes back during 2021. And then we hope to get the Mag Escape Lounge back open, but that's driven by business travelers. So again, that's going to be the driver for that reopening.
In addition to the availability of alcohol, there's some other things that are important to the to the traveler. Mainly, I think, cleanliness, feeling of safety. What are y'all doing at this point to ensure a clean, safe environment for the traveling public?
Well, we have a program that we have put together here at GSP, and it's Prepare for Takeoff. And we're doing things as you would anticipate in some cases, recommending that everyone wear face masks. We've done social distancing stickers on all the floors. We have social distancing stickers in the jet bridges. So as you're boarding the aircraft and as you're deplaning from the aircraft, just reminding of you those things, additional hand sanitizers. We're still talking about wash your hands, just trying to reinforce those things. We are, we felt like we were doing a really good job already at cleaning. I think the one thing we always hear from our customers is how clean our facility is. But, we're being a little bit more vigilant about that as well, just making sure we're getting all of those little details and following up to make sure we're keeping the terminal as clean as possible. And then we're encouraging as much as we can also touchless related interactions. So, today you can do your entire travel experience on your mobile phone. There's no reason to print out a piece of paper, those types of things. So we're encouraging that. Fortunately, when we did Wingspan, we already put in a lot of touchless facilities, like in our restrooms, so whether it be from, the actual soap dispensers and faucets to the paper towel dispensers, all touchless. So we had already done that. A lot of airports didn't have that in place. So we were ahead of the game there in that regard. We put plastic shields up at all of our ticket counters, that the passengers are frequenting. We did that in the rental car facilities. We've done that at the gate areas to provide that barrier for folks. And then we're also looking into some technologies that are proven. There's a lot of things that are out there right now that people are claim that work in sanitizing facilities. The question is what really works. So we are looking at some things that we might be able to implement here in the terminal that would even give us a higher level of sanitation and air quality for folks, since in particular with this virus seems to be as much as and more than anything an airborne transmitted virus. And so we want to make sure we're doing everything we can to take care of the passengers that are traveling in and out of our community.
So in addition to looking at these protocols, health and safety protocols, and establishing them, what else has been keeping your team busy? I know y'all, again, with your 200 or so employees within the district itself, what are y'all focused on mainly?
Well, we have some different divisions within the airport, so we're a little different than a lot of airports. And we talked about some of the financials and the impacts that we've had from COVID. But a few of the things that we do that most other airports don't do, and there's no airport that does all of these items. So several years ago we delved into the land development business, and here at GSP, following our land use master plan back in 2017, we delved into the FBO business and taking over and running our FBO, our fixed base operation for general aviation and corporate aviation. And then we also delved into the cargo business and doing actual cargo handling. We do with that group also some charter passenger aircraft handling, and then we also do warehousing. So those three different business lines that we have stood up now generate the better part of $10 million a year in annual revenue. So, roughly, a little less than 25% of our total revenue, 22.5%. But it means a lot for us because it's given us that ability in this significant decrease in traffic levels on the passenger side. We've seen, as an example, GA corporate activity, general aviation corporate activity, actually come back relatively quickly. Which, you might anticipate just because folks are going to take advantage of, a smaller group of people going on a private airplane to get to where they need to go rather than getting on a commercial aircraft. So that business has come back relatively quickly. Cargo has come back in a strong way. We have our international cargo service over to Germany, flown by Center International and Air Atlanta Icelandic. And that was running, it's pegged to run at 4 flights a week this year. And we're now running some 6 flights a week, sometimes 7 flights a week. And that is in large part because of the demand level to move cargo still across, between here and Europe. But the lack of belly cargo capacity on those passenger aircraft that used to fly to Europe from the U.S., since those flights have been significantly reduced with access being limited to countries in and around Europe. So that freight has had to find another way to move between the U.S. And Europe, and the U.S. and other countries as well. So I don't want, for us, it's, we're focused more on Europe because that's where our cargo flight is. So we've seen a significant increase there, along with a significant increase in e-commerce. Folks are using Amazon, Walmart, other vendors' platforms in order to get products rather than exposing themselves to going out and shopping. So we've seen a lot of e-commerce increase as well. That has come mostly through FedEx, Federal, and as well as UPS, seeing increased volumes here at GSP. So, with that for us, and being able to have that diversified, level of business here at GSP, it really has positioned us well. So when we talk about staff, which was your question on here, as to we have a disproportionate of staff relative to our size for an airport because of those other business lines we run. Mm-hmm. So when you look at what the group we call Cerulean, which runs our FBO, runs our cargo and warehousing operation, our commercial fueling operation in particular, out of our total 220 bodies, that represents about 60 to 70 of our staff, just the Cerulean structure. So they've stayed pretty well intact because, as I've mentioned, we've been busy. So that group has really not been at all affected in having to look for things to do at this point because they've stayed busy. The rest of our team here, we have firefighters, we have police officers, operational staff. All of those positions need to be maintained Yes, the terminal may be a little slower, but we still have to maintain a certain level of staffing to meet federal requirements for those departments. It's given us an opportunity in our facilities department to catch up on some things. As with everything, you get real busy, and some of the things that you'd like to be getting done maybe get pushed to the back burner. So we've been catching up on, some preventative maintenance things that needed to be taken care of. So with that group. And then when I kind of looked at the administrative group in the marketing area and properties, I talked about land development. We're continuing to push land development here at GSP and look for projects to bring to the airport. So that hasn't stopped. And then we've had to retool. We had a lot of capital projects on the table that we were moving forward with until COVID hit. Some of those that hadn't started have been put on the back burner at this point in time. Example of that would be a $75 million parking garage and rental car facility that now we've put on hold until traffic starts to return. But we did have projects underway. So we had about $30 million worth of projects and surface parking facilities, a new fire station here at the airport, and a few other smaller projects that were in progress and needed to be finished. So the team has been very active in ensuring that those are brought to fruition as we're moving towards the end of this year. And then we're getting created on the air service development side and the things we're doing. My team has started some new kind of information blasts out to the airlines where we're giving them a routine updates of what's going on in our community. So it's created different kind of work for the team, but there's still plenty to do. And we all want to be ready and prepared for when we exit this pandemic crisis to be in the best position possible to gear up quickly for the return of demand here at GSP, and in order to make sure that from an economic development standpoint, we're able to provide those air travel resources and product movement that the businesses of the upstate are looking for.
Not to go off script, but I'm good for that. Quick question. Obviously, GSP is a huge economic development asset for the region. Does the intersection of the pandemic and possibly individuals having less inclination to locate in large urban areas, they want to exodus out of those large urban areas, does that bode well for us with GSP being able to provide connectivity back to those large cities, but still have somebody that might want to have their office, their business within the Greenville environs? What's your take on that?
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head of, I think Greenville is well positioned, as a community, as a city. I think we add value to that, to your point, as a regional asset to this community, to make it attractive for people to be able to set up a business here and still be able to move about the country or move about the world in really a pretty efficient way overall. Maybe not as easy as driving over to JFK if you're in downtown New York. I say is easy. It's not easy to drive there, but it's yes, you can get a nonstop out of JFK to lots of international destinations. But it's easy to get in and out of GSP, and we're a one-stop connection to anywhere in the world for the most part. And I think as we've done over the last 10 or 11 years, we get past this pandemic, we're going to continue to push the envelope and move to continue to achieve our goal of being the best airport in the country, and which is still our vision and our goal at the end of the day. And I know we're going to. I've got a great team here at GSP. They're doing extremely well and making sure that we're navigating our way through this pandemic in the best way possible. And so I'm really optimistic about our future and the future of our community. Just based on the drive and the passion that this community has for success.
Very good. Well, again, we're very pleased to have you all in the community and doing such good work. We did have a couple questions, so let me keep in mind. First question is, does airline travel tend to be a leading indicator for economic recovery? If so, if GSP projects being back to 100% in 2024, is that a good target year for the economy as a whole?
Yeah, I would say that passenger travel has been less of an indicator in my mind over the years I've been in the business versus cargo activity.
Hmm.
Um, so I know this is a little unique time and a little different in what we've talked about, but we've seen cargo be very much a leading indicator going into a downturn and a leading indicator coming out of a downturn. I don't think there's any question that passenger travel is some type of an indicator, whether it's actually a leading indicator or not. It may be a lagging indicator at the end of the day
Mhm.
rather than a leading indicator.
Um, so the second question is, you may have mentioned it, but are you using or planning to use infrared temperature monitoring of passengers, employees, or vendor staff to help stop those with fevers from potentially affecting other folks? So talk about your regimen there.
Yeah, and sure. The health screening side has been a thorny issue for airports around the country because most airports do not have the authority to impose any kind of health-related restrictions. So example would be if we with our staff actually went to doing temperature checks directly or infrared checking for passengers and found someone that had a temperature, what do you do with them? We don't have the authority to say you can't fly. That's not something that, as a political subdivision of the state, that's not in our charter to be able to do. So there's been, and most airports around the country are in that predicament. So what we've seen more is Congress. In fact, there was a bill actually that's moving right now from a couple of senators related to temperature checks at the checkpoints and having TSA do those. And that can be done. And so that's really been the major push at this point. There have been some airports that have gotten into that. LAX did set up some infrared equipment in order to do temperature checks there at one of their terminals. But the reality was at the end of the day is they found they couldn't really do anything with it. I mean, they would identify the person, they would say something to the person, but if the person still wanted to travel, they had to let them travel. And so the only one in that particular situation, at least right now, unless there becomes an authority on this that takes control of saying, no, if you have a temperature, you can't fly, is really the airline. Because when you buy an airline ticket, there's a contract of carriage that you accept. And in that contract of carriage, an airline has the right to deny you boarding pretty much for any reason. And so, if the airlines stepped into that role, and we did have Frontier Airlines here at GSP early on in the COVID process that was doing temperature checks at the gates for their passengers that were boarding the aircraft, but none of the other airlines have taken that on that I'm aware of to date. So there were some of those things happening at international facilities in particular, and there were some of those things going on. There have been some states where there's more state-run airports where they have the authority to do it. So as an example, I believe at Alaska, in Anchorage, they've done some of that. But for the majority of us around the country, we don't have the ability to enforce anything. If we have someone that has a temperature, is how do we enforce denying their travel? So.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. Longer term question. It may deal more with land development strategy, what have you, but what concerns about climate change influences any of your medium to long-term thinking at the airport district? So how are y'all addressing that issue? Are you at this point?
Yeah, GSP has a long history of being sensitive to the environment. If you look over the years, I think the second year I was with GSP in 2010, I received an award from South Carolina for Tree Farmer of the Year. Because we were growing, lots of pine trees. So we have a tree growth program and a harvest program here on GSP property. We try to balance that with development that we have going on. But where we can, we do other things. So as an example, for years and years, airports around the country for equipment that would be used to air condition an aircraft while it's on the ground or to supply power to an aircraft while it's on the ground at the gate was all diesel powered. So we've electrified all of that now. So in places where we can do things to stop using fossil fuel here at GSP and go to electrification or other alternative fuels that are more clean burning at the end of the day, if we need to do that, we are moving in that direction here at the airport. The reality is the airport itself is not a huge generator, does not have a huge carbon footprint for what we're, it's hard for me to say this because, you'd say, well, yeah, but you bring airlines in and out. We do, but, we can't necessarily control what the airlines are doing in that space, even though they're becoming themselves, trying to become much more efficient, looking at alternative fuels. I actually saw a newscast this morning where Airbus is looking, at some things, hopefully by 2035 to go completely to some alternative fuel structures that, again, would minimize that carbon footprint. So there's a lot of activity in the industry. We try to control those things very directly that we can, but the activity that generates the largest carbon footprint on the property are the air carriers and the aircraft flying in and out of GSP.
Very good. Well, that was the end of our questions. And I will let you have the last word. I got a few closing remarks, but anything you're looking forward to in the next year, aside from getting back to normal, we usually end these with a message of hope. So anything you'd have to add to that, Dave?
Yeah, I'm still excited about the future. We talked a little bit about the passion of our community and the growth of our community. And, when I talk to economic developers in the upstate, they're getting pinged with lots of inquiries right now. So there's still, I think maybe to your point, that may be in some part due to folks wanting to get out of some of those major metro areas now and look at other locations for their businesses. But I think we're also just overall, we're a great community that people have found and they want to come to. So I think the future for our community, the future for GSP is great. We still have, $200 to $300 million of capital programs on the horizon. We're going to execute on those. It's just a matter of timing right now. If COVID had not have happened, we would have been, as we are right now, wrapping up a terminal planning study. And within the next 2 years, we would have been going into another terminal expansion project, along with the $75 million parking garage and several other projects. That's still ahead of us. So we're going to recover from this. I'm confident of that. And, GSP is going to make sure it stays ahead of the curve on being able to provide, great opportunities for air travel, both for passenger activity and cargo activity. And we're still going to develop property here and help bring good business with well-paying jobs to the upstate of South Carolina. So, it's going to, as we say, it's maybe a little pause here. But at a point here, we're going to hit the pause button and turn it back to play. And we're going to re-energize things and move ahead. And so I'm excited about it.
Again, we appreciate all your leadership, what you bring to the community as a leader and as an organization. So I want to thank Dave Edwards for being here with us today. Thank our attendees. This recording will be shared on the Greenville Chamber's website and will also be sent to the attendees along with a survey. So please take just a minute to complete that survey for us. Next Tuesday at 10 o'clock, we've got a very special guest, Conway Belangia from the Greenville County. He'll be discussing what to expect at the polls this November. It's a very important topic. We take time at the end of every call to remind everyone, please do your part in helping stopping the spread of coronavirus. Wash your hands, mask up. Let's do our parts to care for our neighbors and just have a great day, y'all. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Hank.